The book name was Gulamgiri. There was no English translation by then. But when I read that later on, Gulamgiri, what I found was that Periyar was very popular by then as a movement leader. Christophe, both Periyar and Phule come from more or less the same social status in the Shudra hierarchy. This Kumbi Malis in Maharashtra, a thinker in Phule. That's the one major thing. Then I wrote an article on him in Telugu also. But then when I began to read him, two things struck me very deeply. One, his practice of women's liberation is far different and radical than all Brahman Samajas, Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, and Prardhana Samaj. And what struck me as a young man at that time was the name of his organization. It was Satya Shodhak, means truth seeking, whereas all other organizations were either Arya Samaj, Rajaram Mohan in every domain. This, child marriage was common among all the national leaders, including Ambedkar. But nobody thought of an illiterate child wife of 9 years teaching in the bedroom instead of having sex with her. And in fact, later on, I realized he said that pertains the major 18th and 20th year, they are not going to have sexual relations. He was teacher. Then this news has gone to Pune Brahmins, and at that time, Tilak was a very young man. And it was Tilak's relatives, his own Brahmin community, which got thoroughly offended, and they threatened his father, and Phule did not relent to teach his wife, and they were thrown out. And what shocked me as a Shudra, OBC in those days with a Marxist background was the man took his child wife and went to a Dalit house near Pune and started living there. Later on, of course, in the film, it is shown that he also lived with his Muslim friend, Fatima Sheikh's brother, Usman Sheikh. He was his classmate. Now, what made this young Shudra flower selling? His father was a man of 32 acres land given as inam by Peshwai rulers. A rebel. There was another incident. After his mother's death, his father handed over almost a child widow relative of his, who was a cook in a missionary house called John. And there was a library in that, and she brought up Phule, and she learned English while working in the kitchen. And Phule learned speaking English with his aunt, stepmother, as a child also. Now, that was the reason why, though he studied only seventh grade in today's standards in Scottish school, uh, Christoph, when I read the introduction, no production civilizational relations with Hindu Brahmin relationship, and of course, his analysis of Dashawataras was the first major analysis how the god images became fish and tortoise and war building and so on and so forth as the process of migrants through the Aryan process. But more than that, it was he who first, without quoting from any book, studied the untouchable life and the shoemaking, pot making, and tilling and selling the grain in the markets and the exploitation of Shetji and Bodji. As he used the two names for Shudras as a collective group in which Marathas were included and the Barbars were included, and in middle caste, and Atishudras are all Dalits. For example, there are 59 castes in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh now. On the upper side, he also clubbed them into what he called Shetji Bodjis. Now, this classification of Indian society into two productive and science rooted forces on the one side, exploitative and anti production Brahminic ideology, where science and truth were completely lost in India. Now, that was an eye opener to me. And that is where, when I wrote Why I'm Not a Hindu, that one chapter where I said, the Hindu gods and us and our gods and goddesses and Hindus, I could show that all our gods and goddesses have emerged from agrarian production relations, medical sciences, and native rooted human and animal relationships, and so on and so forth. Whereas their gods came from books and with weapons and violence as the philosophical ideology of religion. Phule hints at that. Our history, our heritage is, in fact, he did not refer to Buddha or anybody. He shows from the people's life, we are basically non-violent and productive. And even in the film, it was shown that he was attacked, he was beaten, and right from his school days, when he attended his Brahmin classmates' marriage, then Savitri Bai was attacked when she and Fatima started school with stones and dung, and some of these scenes the film board actually removed from the film, but something also comes in. Now, Phule, in fact, more effectively by owning the agrarian Truth Seekers International, Truth Seekers organization through a means of non-violence. And this was different from Buddha's practice, because I did my PhD on Gautam Buddha's political philosophy. And it was different from Ambedkar too. Because, one question I faced in all the universities was that, I did not quote many from West or Indian writers, but I learned how to write originally from Phule. Ambedkar quotes essentially, therefore, uh, even quite lately they accepted it. But I think the most original writing in India and the first Shudra writing of the majority people. If you look at the population today, Shudras constitute roughly 52%. Even Telangana caste census show that 52 and more, including Reddis and others. Dalit constitute roughly 17%. So, and the Brahmins and the upper caste constitute roughly around, the Dvijas constitute roughly around 5.67% in some of the states. So, one thing that we should realize is Shudra Phule has given us an independent, universally validated Shudra philosophical base. And it is this base that can defeat the Brahminic, Vedic, Ramayana, Mahabharata centered discourse that even RSS BJP is trying to now reimpose on the universities, colleges, and schools. Secondly, Phule's feminism is radically different from all other social reformers' approach to women, whether it is uh, Bengali Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar or even any other thing. Phule made she is only 4 years younger to him, and in the film also it comes out so powerful that she actually emerges as a critical theoretician, advisor, teacher, and a social interconnecting force, because she was involved in bubonic plague, seriously protecting people. She was deeply involved in major drought situation when farmers were dying, and Pule tries to organize the distribution of grain to masses. But Savitri Bai was right among them in protecting the children and the old. So, uh, Gandhi also married child wife, and many others. Nehru also had a child wife. Kamala Nehru was not very big in that time. Ramabai was also almost a child wife, and they all left their child wives here and went and studied, and of course that was a necessity at another level. But what Pule did was a different experiment. He made an intellectual combination out of his own illiterate child by educating her, and putting a Muslim woman as a colleague to her, and then uh, very subtly differing with the missionaries and making an indigenous education system for women. Now, this was a radical rupture. So, I think, uh, not spending more time, what I would say is that it is important to relook at the Shudra philosophical ideology. This book, I gave a full length letter that Sahu Maharaj wrote to, who was former governor of Bombay when he was in England, and he takes all the Pule's theoretical formulations and shows how, as a king, he cannot work with Brahmins, how they deceive the farmers, the lawyers, the judges, and instances after instances he explains and asks the British regime to empower the Shudras and Ati Shudras, and my own state is in crisis because of the Brahmin deceptivity. India has only one evidence of a ruler writing in English, that too, very good English, to a British major Bombay region governor, explaining about the cruel practices of the Brahminic forces. Now, all this he took from Phule. To economies, our own villages, our own Shudra hegemonic identities, and then our own pride histories by reading Pule's. And then I think a lot of our OBC Dalit women must read and reread Pule and Savitribai. And we all should know that within one small life, after all, Savitribai lived only 66 years, Pule lived 63 years. Within that small life, she too has done first Shudra women. There was no equivalent Brahmin women to her. There was no equivalent uh, any other women, and Dalit women had no base to. The Kavya Pule with a much more positivist futurist vision even than Pule. So, for example, she says that we should treat English as our mother tongue. Let us not bother about Marathi. And in the film also, it is shown she advises Pule that speaking is not enough, you must write a book. And that is when he starts writing Gulamgiri. So I think Pule and Savitribai should become household sources of not only reading but worship and everyday discourse, along with Ambedkar, and of course Ramabai has her own example before us, but they are contrast. One is a Brahma Samaj, one is Aryan Samaj, one is Prardhana based on Brahmin literature. We have the Satyasodak roots. Experimented even in Usmania by starting a Satyashodak Teachers Association, wherein a lot of work was done to replace the Brahmin, Reddy, and other teachers with the Dalit, Adivasi, and Shudra OBC teachers in the universities. So I'll stop here. Maybe we can discuss.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Ravinder? Uh,
Yeah, thank you, Kiran. Professor Kancha, very thankful for your detailed explanation from the past 200 years that you have explained and taken us through. And what my question is like, uh, what are the parallels that can be drawn between the Shudras in India and elsewhere in the other countries, the marginalized people? How, what kind of experience they may, especially women's?
Well, Christopher was can compare many things in terms of class relations with the Western thinkers. But there is no equivalent couple like Phule in the 19th century, even in Europe and America, where a husband educated a 300 million, 3,000 years old illiterate Shudra heritage child, girl child, and made her a teacher, there is no parallel. See, he is only and only man who treated wife as not a family woman, a cook. And take, for example, even in the film it is shown, when his father calls him and says that till now, after they cross 30s and so on, you have and procreate children. Savitribai is incapable of that. You know what Phule says? A very scientific, robust decision and answer. No, you are thinking that she is responsible for not having children, but in fact, I could be the main responsible person. So, in fact, there is another story also that Savitri's father also came and asked him. I convinced Savitri that you can marry another woman and have children. Three of you can live together. And it appears Phule said that no, I am incapable of procreating children. My sperm is incapable. We'll ask Savitri to marry another man. We live together and bring up the children. Finally, they brought up Yashwantrao, who is a Brahmin widow child. So, a combination of even convincing most violent Brahmins, putting them to the shame by bringing Brahmin child widows and a pregnant woman and getting her delivered, and then incorporating Brahmins into his army of Satyashodhaks. It's not an ordinary thing. There is no parallel in this kind of example in the world. I would say perhaps by his time, he was far ahead of all slave black thinkers in America. That Douglas, William Douglas, I think. So he was the first person to start a journal for black liberation, and he went to Abraham Lincoln and convinced him, and so on and so forth. And but Phule has actually liberated several thousands of years of slaves in one generation, at least ideologically, practically, in one region as an example, and which could be adapted to the whole of the world and India. So he is really exceptional.
Yeah. So we'll take two questions from Vasmati Yadav. So she raised hand. Or
Yeah.
Vasmati?
Yes, sir. Thanks
Same.
for the wonderful information. And I want to know about nowadays Shudras, gods and goddess in Telangana. Why? Because after formation of Telangana identical means festivals become like Bonalu, Batukamma, and Ogukata. These three are basically Shudras and Atishudras festivals and Jataras, fates. How we have to see because of Sanskritization, we are changing rituals mainly. How we have to see according to our Shudras ideology and all. Why? Because I am doing my PhD on this topic, transformations in ritual performances, Bonalu, Batukamma, and Ogukata. When I referred books, already we know very clearly, and Christopher also said, Shudras didn't write many books, especially on their culture and all. And even I didn't found many books on these three. And as well as I want to mention one point in 1938, Suravaram Pratapareddy wrote the book on Hindula Pandugalu, the festivals. But in that also he didn't mention about the any festivals like our Dalit festival, Dalit and Shudras BC's festivals. Just how I have to means connect and how I have to think about these situations. Just I want an advice from you.
Okay, did you read Why I'm Not a Hindu?
Yes, sir.
No, in that there is a chapter called their gods and goddesses and us and our gods and our goddesses. So in
Yes, sir.
Telangana, I looked at Pochama, Birappa, Maisama,
వచ్చిందా
Potaraju,
జాఫర్
and so
బాబు
on. So now
వచ్చిందా
one problem with
ఓకే వచ్చింది
the kind of cultural research that you want to do around the Shudra life is that in every state almost there are
రంగు రాజేశం గారు రాజేశం రాజేశం గారు మీరు
అన్నగారు చెప్పులే
మీరు అది క్లోజ్ చేయండి. అది మీరు వీడియో ఆడియో పెట్టారు, మీరు ఆడియో ఇచ్చేయండి, మీ వాయిస్ అంతా వస్తుంది.
so what is the problem is that there are no proper written textual narratives. For example, you take Komarelli Mallanna or Ailoni Mallanna or Sri Shailam Mallanna. Now these were shepherds who migrated during the Aryan invasion and destroying the Harappan civilization and Sindhu region. They migrated along Krishna and Godavari rivers, and they established animal economies in the Karnataka region and Telangana region. And they became gods. There are a number of goddesses like that. Even Maisama is a goddess who must have discovered tank bunding and water storing. Similarly, Birappa is a god who looked after goat and sheep in a big way. But there are no written texts around their economic relationship to the animal economy, milk, wool, and the kind of marketing that they created around this. So, for example, milk is not just milk. Milk is curd, milk is buttermilk, milk is ghee, so on and so forth. So, as a scholar, what you have to do is don't depend only on written texts. There is a people's understanding and narratives and contextualizing the whole history of the caste. So you have to bring in that into your analysis, even in PhD thesis. It is possible. For example, if you look at my post-Hindu India, there are 7 chapters. One is around Adivasis called unpaid teachers, Madigas, subaltern scientists, the leather technology that they did, how leather industry started, and the Malas productive soldiers, Golakurmas as meat and milk economists. I mean, the whole reversal of the terminology itself. And Kumaris, Kamaris, Vadrangis, the goldsmiths as unknown engineers and so on. Food producers also. Now, what you have to do is, there is a ritual life in villages. There is this idea of abstract God in all agrarian people, whether they are Shudras or Dalits. Batkamma, Bonalu, these are some manifestos around the divine images. For example, Batkamma is a manifesto of water goddess called Gaurama. Bonalu is a manifesto of Ellama and other goddesses. So we offer food for them on that day, uh, along with meat and milk and everything that we have. They are not vegetarian goddesses or gods. So you need to bring all that into your analysis, and your references can be from people's interviews. That is quite a solid methodology in social anthropology and ethnography that you can do.
Yeah. Anujin?
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Professor Kancha, for your enlightening thoughts because it was really, I mean, some were known, but some were still unique. Questions. One is about Savitri Bai Phule, who is, I believe, I may be wrong, I believe she is not credited as much as Phule is given. Certainly, Phule has made him Savitri Bai Phule. But don't you think that she made Jyotiba Phule the Jyotiba Phule? Because the writing, she even told him to start writing, and then he start writing, and his book became popular.
Yeah.
Which is, if she would not have prompted him to write the book, he would not have been as known as, or maybe lost in the history, in the pages of history, and known to us as he is to us today.
No,
The
you
second,
are.
sir,
Yeah.
one more question. Second is about Fatima Sheikh, who has lost in the pages of history or in the this history preview, because we are keep talking about Phule, this Jyotiba Phule, and his wife, but we never discuss about Fatima Sheikh, who was always standing by them, as well as while she was there when her wife went to take training for teaching, she was even along with her. And when they first met, she found to be more intelligent than this Jyotiba's wife. So, just want to know your take on this, because you better know and better you can better enlighten us on this. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you, Anu, for that good question. After seeing the film, I wrote an article I think, in the Federal, or no, it is in the News Click, that the film's title should have been Phule's, not just Phule. Because Savitri Bai was a multi energetic force. And the way she grew, in fact, if you read her childhood background before the marriage also, in her village, her father was a patil. He was a kind of a village head in certain sections. So she used to go and listen some private Brahmin teachings to their own children, and learn certain Sanskrit phrases from them. And even in the film, it is shown that she goes to a Brahmin house and a shop, a bania shop also, and asks for a book, and along with that, some biscuit that the girl gets. Now, she didn't read and write, but she was just looking at the book with curiosity as a child. So, you are absolutely right. I also have a feeling that a lot needs to be written about, contextualized, even our times, about the greatness of Savitribai, and equally the greatness of Fatima Sheikh as a, you know, that family's greatness is also very important. Her brother Usman Sheikh, I don't know, he never appears to have been married. In the film, they brother and sister live together, and they join the whole social change movement. Even within Islam, there was equally strong Brahminic kind of fundamentalism against female education, male meaningful education. So she also shoulder to shoulder fought and in fact led. In fact, I also felt that when Phule was awarded Mahatma in Bombay with the initiative of Baroda Maharaj and so on, Fatima Sheikh was sitting there, but Phule acknowledged just only Savitri Bai there. So he
Yes.
handed over the shawl to her and so on. So the point that you are making is very important. Unless lot more women write about these two women and about this couple, it is important that even now, in my autobiography, I also wrote that when I thought of marrying, in the early, I did not because I wanted to study, read, write, and then fight in the radical movement and so on. Later on, after reading Phule Savitribai life, now I thought that I cannot be a husband like Phule. I could have been harsh to my wife, or I could not have got a wife like Savitri Bai. So I cannot think of experimenting, uh, having known a life like that. So I was literally afraid of having a married life if I could not really put Pule kind of life in practice, Savitri Bai kind of life in practice. So therefore, it is important how they cook together, how they handled their social organization work together, how she thought of digging a well, how she thought of uh, nurturing the Brahmin widows. In the film also, when Pule says, how do we manage these women here? You want more women and shelter centers. She says there are all these people, Fatima and that Brahmin, Usman Sheikh and all this. More than anything, I am here. I will manage. So that kind of, and then you must write, not just speak. And she also begins to write poetry. Now, I found her as virtual goddess, and goddess Saraswati cannot be compared with her in any sense. I think if there is any education goddess and goddess of courage, confidence, and human life in the world, it is Savitri Bai and her husband as Phule. I agree with you that even Muslim writers don't write about Fatima Sheikh. The tragedy of the Muslim intellectuals is they have never put out national figures from women, from different people from that society. It is we who have to write, and most of you, like young women, you Madhu and Sumati and all these girls, you have to do a lot of work in future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
thank you, sir. Sir, I just want to know if you can give me any reference where we can get something about Fatima Sheikh and also your autobiography name so that it will be helpful for my work in
Yeah,
writing
my
about.
autobiography name you just write from a shepherd boy to an intellectual.
Okay.
The soft copy is available on Amazon, but hard copy, it is now printout is over. It will come back into market soon again. The other thing is about Fatima Sheikh. I also did not come across much. I think you can perhaps read that British writer scholar who wrote on Phule and the Western social non-Brahmin movement. All in all, I forgot her full name. Uh, 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 you know, uh, anti-Brahmin movement in Western India by all in all or something. O is the starting letter.
Okay.
And in Marathi, there seems to be a lot of writing on Fatima also. Maybe a lot of translation needs to be looked at. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. Sir, there are two quick questions on messages and also on YouTube. One is why Shudras have failed to reinstate their own goddesses against false Aryan Brahminical Vedic goddesses, and what is to be done. That is first question. And second question is quick question. Can you elaborate a little more on the similarities, differences, and connections between Mahatma, Phule, and Periyar?
Well, about the gods and goddesses, unfortunately, there are several gods and goddesses in the Shudra society. But there are no properly written texts about them. Whereas the Brahminic goddesses came from Vedas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the story narratives. After all, divine figures survive only through stories. If you look at the life of Jesus, if those four stories written by Marx and John and those four writers who accompanied him, Jesus would not have been there in the human life. Similarly, most of the Shudra gods, goddesses have powerful human life surviving and ethical stories, but there are no written texts about them. Whereas Rama, Krishna, they come from the Ramayana Mahabharata written text. Therefore, in the story narrative, reading and spreading the word through text and other forms, it becomes powerful. About the Shudra gods, goddesses, there are oral history tellers, Kada tellers, for example, Ogukata and so on. But I think that won't sustain. I've been asking a lot of people to properly write about the god goddess histories and their philosophy, their talking discourses. After all, this discourse is very important. What a particular god told people, what a particular god talked about, diseases, how they influenced human life. So the best way is to read, uh, you know, uh, the life stories on Jesus, and then imagine how we can also write the life stories of Shudra gods and goddesses. Even now they can be written about. That is one. About the comparison between Phule and Periyar is a very powerful organizer, and he has created a Dravidian alternative conceptual ideology as against Aryanism. But he confined that to the Tamil region. So therefore, he remained a regional social movement leader. He was never considered to be a thinker. One of the problems with Periyar was he straight away declared his atheist ideology. No God, no God, no God. In a society of spiritually inclined, whether literate or illiterate, using the word of abstract God or a specific name of a God, multi-religions competing constantly to reinvest again the divine philosophy among people. Periyar's atheist philosophy did not really spread, whereas Phule was a thinker and a philosopher, was a moralizer of society. I don't know whether he read about Buddha, but he certainly read about Jesus. He included a lot of Jesus methods into his practice. Though Jesus was not married, he was married, but Jesus was very kind to women, whether it was Mary Magdalene or other prostitutes that he liberated, the slave women that they followed him, and so on. So therefore, Jesus has used the Christian missionary literature, Phule, to construct a universal philosophical idea, not confining to one region. Though he wrote in Marathi and Maharashtra examples figure and so on, but Periyar basically is an organizer, basically a speaker, though he also runs a journal and all that. He has a big library of his own and so on. So the difference between Periyar and Phule is we can read Periyar in interpreted manner and some of his articles, but there is no coherent philosophical, even proper text like Phule had one in the form of slavery or the whip card, farmer's whip card. Like Ambedkar has annihilation of caste or over the Shudras. So this is the problem. Unless you have a proper text of your own philosophical foundation. Gandhi had his philosophical foundation through Hind Swaraj. That's how he sustained more than Nehru, who did not write a philosophical text of his own. And though I wrote so many books, why I am not a Hindu always remains as my identity in the world is because it puts a philosophical foundation of my ideas into that small text. So that is a very important thing. And Periyar did not have that kind of a written text. So he lost out there. Okay.
Sir, shall we take a last one?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is regarding. Hello, sir. There has been an increasing political stance to fragment the Bahujan, and it's backed by the institutional policy of subclassification. In this backdrop, how do we reimagine Mahatma Phule?
Well, see, if you look at Phule Times and his organization, read carefully his own writings and the biographies that have come on him, there are these fragmentations. He very tactfully overcomes them. And see, the issues like divisions among reservations, reservation as a tool of education and employment for a small section within a huge group of Shudra, OBCs, and Dalits, Adivasis, is not going to be a permanent issue. So the reservation division or one unit is not a philosophical one. The philosophical one is the Shudra and Atishudra history and life and their production, their philosophy. For example, in the Shudra Rebellion book, I have a chapter how Dalit category is a byproduct of declaring leather industry as untouchable. Before that, there is no human untouchability within the Shudra fourth Varna. They were part of the fourth Varna. Or they were the forest outside tribal mass. But once the division of labor was happening, and particularly discovery of leather technology from the body of the animal, converting skin into leather, leather into goods. That was the first industry that this section has discovered. But it had accompanied certain smells and processes which the spiritual Brahmanism declared as pollution, untouchable, smelly, and so on, and educated Shudras also to follow them. Now, there the Shudra society failed in not understanding the Vedic, cruelty. In fact, tilling is also shown as untouchable. Soil is also seen as untouchable. There is a phrase in my, I am not a Hindi book. There is no foot without mud. And mud is declared untouchable by Brahmanism. Similarly, there is no child without menstruation. But menstruation is declared as untouchable. Now, this is reversal of the universal process. Mud is the source of food. We need to put our hand into it. Menstruation is source of childbirth. We should treat women at that time as the most respectable, happily livable among us. That liquid is not the problem. It is just a problem of bathing after some time. So it is like our own sweat. So therefore, I think we have to completely reverse the philosophical domain of Brahmanism from people's life and production. That we have not yet done. Ambedkar also mostly handled them through reanalyzing their books, extensively quoting from the West. Phule has done one book on from the production point of view, but it is a very primitive stage. He was the first ever Shudra writer to write. There was no Shudra writer before that in any language, Sanskrit or even Arabic or Persian or whatever. So we need to do a lot of new writing from people's life. Field is 100% open for new scholars. India is the richest now for scientific social science building from people's life.
Sir, thank you, sir. Rajesham garu, meer chala sepu nunchi, I think you are there since long time. So you want to ask some question? Sir, unmute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Sir, my question to Aile sir is about his famous book, Why I Am Not a Hindu, referring to which just now he proudly proclaimed that it has become his identity. Actually, your book is a clarion call of all the Mulvasi Shudras of our India. But my question is, why should we take an objection to calling ourselves as Hindu? Since if we go to the roots, the word Hindu is derived from Sindhu. As the history shows many examples, it was actually the river Sindhu. The inhabitants of areas surrounding that Sindhu river are called, they are Sindhu people. And due to some peculiar problem prevailing in Persian language, Sa could not be pronounced, and it has become Ha. So Sindhus became Hindus. So originally, Hindu is reminiscent of our great glorious past of Sindhu culture. So that way, we are basically, and from the beginning, we are Sindhus, and in other way, Hindus. So we are Hindus, we are Mool Nivasis, and we are Shudras, and we can proudly proclaim that we are Hindus, we are the real Hindus, and we are major Hindus. And those settlers who came from Iran and other areas, they are Brahmins. Actually, if we take the history also, this religion was called Brahmin religion only. Hindu, ascribing the term Hindu to a religion is of recent past only. It has started from 200, 300 years only. So that gives us a reason to stick to the original term of Hindu and proudly proclaiming ourselves as the real Hindus, and that way that will be an assertive way of striking our rights. Whereas I
Okay,
am
sir.
not a Hindu is some sort of escapism. My feeling is I want the opinion of Aile sir on this point.
No, see, when I wrote Why I'm Not a Hindu, you know that this is the first book to declare from a Shudra. Though Ambedkar said, I was born untouchable, but somewhere he also says, I was born Hindu, which was not in my hand, but I will not die as Hindu. Whereas I said, I am not a Hindu at all. Now, the reason is simple. I know that the word Hindu came from the river Sindhu region, and it was the first Muslim writer who used the word Hind for Sindhu region people, and people was Al-Biruni in the early 11th century. He came along with Muhammad Ghori as a scholar. But then Raja Ram Mohan Rai adopted the word Hindu to the Brahminic religion during his reform movement. Earlier, of course, the Muslims were calling these people Hindus with a sense of derogation that they are, uh, non-believers. They are this region people, but backward people, and so on and so forth. So gradually, after Gandhi came into picture and the nationalist movement, the whole idea of Sanatan Dharma was turned into Hinduism, and all the Sanatanic Sanskrit texts from Rig Veda to Manudharma Shastra were put into their own basket. Now the question is, the word Shudra is pre-Aryan. The Harappan city civilization builders were Shudras. The word Shudra actually means, in the pre-Aryan sense, producers. The first agrarian people were called Shudras, who were who emerged out of hunting and fishing and started tilling land and examining land and seed relationship and seed and water relationship and so on. So therefore, uh, first of all, the word Shudra has gone out of use because the Shudras themselves started feeling inferior, and the word is seen as derogatory. Whereas the Brahmins themselves started feeling that we are not Hindus, we are Brahmins. owning of our religious identity with our own historical productive relations comes as a natural process. But now, if you say that we are real Hindus, it is only part of the RSS uh, forces who are part of it. They themselves are saying it is not Brahmins, but we OBCs are real Hindus. We should get better place. It is not the better place question in BJP RSS. It is a question of relooking at the entire production, science, history, geography of India, going back to Harappan civilization, owning our roots there. That is the reason why I wrote series of articles. I am Harappan, but not Hindu. I own my Shudra identity, but not Hindu. Because they anyway owned it. Why should I bother about it? That is my idea. Now, unless you examine the importance of this, read and study among people, unless you look at the productive science, we can't create new concepts. So, for example, when I said Dalitization and Shudrization are the key links to de-Brahmanization of the society, then labor as life and leisure as life. And then we have to move towards spiritual democracy, leaving spiritual fascism. Now, these are some of the philosophical ideas. When I say I believe in buffalo nationalism, but not cow nationalism, there is a very strong rootedness in that. Buffalo is the earliest domesticated Indian animal and a black, beautiful, multi-tasking, most milk-giving animal. But we have not written anything about it. So we need to write a lot on all these things. Then an identity forms in its own course. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Kancha. Indeed, we need this kind of sessions, more sessions on this, especially for the young generation. We need this kind of sessions to guide them to take up the research, basically on very critical aspects that are there in the society. So, and we all know that there are, most of the Indian universities are in the clutches of either right wing or left wing, mostly dominated by only certain areas of research. In fact, they are not encouraging to take up issues of Bahujan. But we have to take up this kind of issues, maybe a kind of, especially state universities where there are so much of Bahujans faculty members are there. We have to take, I think state universities will play a very important role in taking up these kind of issues, and especially on independent research. Independent centers, there is a requirement for independent centers to take up this kind of research and intensify research on Bahujans aspects, as either cultural, social, educational, political aspects of it. And we strongly believe organization like us will actually play an important role in taking up this kind of research. And also we will be uploading the entire our session on our YouTube channel. You can also share, we will share in all groups. You can also free to share, and also get back to us if you have any concerns. And lastly, I thank on behalf of All India OBC Students Association, Professor Christophe, Professor Kancha Ilaya, for joining today and delivering a very insightful, thought-provoking lectures on not only on Phule but also on special and additional aspects of Dalit Bahujan and Dalit Bahujan issues. We are sorry, Professor Ratnam could not able to join this session because of was stuck up in the traffic and he was unable to join this session. But hopefully next session in the future webinars he will be joining us. With this note, we will take up other issues, especially in the form of conventions and seminars, and also on offline mode. We will be taking up this kind of issues. We were busy with raising this caste census issue. Now we wanted to strengthen on ideological issues. Especially we have identified we are lacking, especially OBCs are lacking in ideology point of view. So we wanted to strengthen on that domain. With this note, I thank everyone for joining this session. Jai Bhim, Jai Phule, Jai Periyar, Jai OBC.
Jai Savitri. Yeah.
Jai Savitri. Jai Fatima Sheikh. Thank you so much.